All right, we're live from STS Studios in Jonesboro, Arkansas. This is an stspod.club production, and I got someone I've known for a pretty long time. I've been a fan of his. I'm just going to tell you, Bruno, I was a big, huge Bruno mark. Downtown Bruno, how the hell are you, Bruno?
Oh, awesome, man. All the way from Fort Duquesne Boulevard, baby. It's like Mama says, it bees that way sometimes.
Oh, my God.
I'm looking. Oh, by the way, for the people that are watching this, I want everybody to understand, I don't walk around like this all the time with the downtown Bruno shirt. I'm not a mark for myself. But if I'm going to do a podcast or any type of situation, yeah, I just want to make that clear. I don't want people to think I'm, out there.
I remember being talking to someone one time, and it was one of the indie shows here, and I said, I bet he sleeps with that belt. And all I could think about is that guy laying in the bed with that belt on and sleeping. I'm thinking, he's a mark for himself, but that's funny, man. I got to tell you, I've got a couple of stories about you, and you're going to remember them when I start talking about them. Probably one of them you won't remember, but here's some downtown Bruno stories, believe it or not. And me and you talked a little bit last night. We're very, very close to the same age, a couple of years apart. You're a couple of years older than me.
Yeah, I'm 31 and you're 33.
Yes, sir. That's right. But the weird thing was, here I was on this side growing up watching wrestling as you was growing up in the business. I mean, I never realized that we were so close to the same age. So when you arrived in Memphis, me and you, I was just 2 years younger than you. You could have been a senior and I'd been a sophomore in high school. But, you was doing so much. And part of it, to me, I want to ask that, which has probably been asked, but I tell you what I did. I went to the Mall of Memphis one time, and I'm only telling this story to show you how big of a mark I am. And my friend Lynn Pearson, shout out to Lynn, we went to the Mall of Memphis, and we got airbrushed caps. We got our airbrushed caps that said, Mama says it bees that way sometimes on it.
Look here. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Yep. It's like Mama says, it bees that way sometimes.
And I'm going to see if you remember this. You came to a con with us. The Philly people came down, and you joined that con without, I don't even think we contacted you. We just told you we were going to be there, and you came and hung out with us.
Is that the one that was downtown Memphis at the old River Market?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, that's back when I was, yeah. It wasn't just me. It was me and Terry Adonis, if you remember him.
Yes, it was, yeah.
Yeah, it was on a Monday because we had the matches at the Coliseum that night. And I was only like, what was that? That was like 1983 maybe? No,
it was a little bit. It was after I got out of high school, so it'd been about 86, I think. It might have been while I was still in high school. I think it was when I got out because I was smartened up, quote unquote, I guess in 85. So it kind of be after 85. And you came, you didn't kayfabe or anything. All the guys that came and hung out with us was just so cool and so awesome. So.
Yeah, I remember that. For a bunch of reasons. After we got through with the little speeches or whatever, they started saying, well, if you want anything from the bar. Now, I don't drink now until 6:30 p.m. That's my rule. And I don't drink every day. But back then, I ain't going to lie, I had a bit of a drinking problem. And here I was at 11 o'clock in the morning pounding pitchers of beer. Time we got to the Coliseum that night, I was so wasted, I could barely even go to the ring. I remember that very well. But it was like Randy Hale sent me down to do the convention, and I wasn't even going to get paid for it. So I said, by God, I'm going to get my money's worth. I ate, I drank, me and Terry Donald's both, but
I didn't even know Randy sent you down there. We all thought you just came on your own. And then
Randy sent me down there.
Yeah. And then you came with some of my friends. I was not there that time, but it was Jamie Ward, Dennis Carluzzo, Brian Hildebrand, good friends with all those guys, and y'all all hung out. And he told me today, he said, ask Bruno about going to Sid's house, and the pit bull almost got him.
Well, I don't remember an incident like that because I knew Sid's pit bull.
I think it was a pit bull. It was his dog.
No,
it was a Sid's dog.
But he didn't almost get me because I knew him. His name was Bud. I used to take Bud when Sid went to WCW. He moved to Atlanta for a while. Hell, I used to bring Bud down there to it. So now the story's a little bit skewed because I always got along good with Bud.
Yeah, but he didn't know them other people at all, so he didn't know Dennis.
Me and Bud was, I don't know if you could be friends with a dog. You know what I'm saying? We were.
Yeah, right.
We knew me. So, but yeah. Wow, Brian Hildebrand and Dennis Cortluccio. God bless them both. They're both.
That's what I was going to say. What do you remember about Brian? Brian and Dennis both were my friends, but I think people, because Brian died so young, I don't think people actually. Did you two, were y'all in the same little territory, indie territory? How did that work? There was something there with you two that always connected. I don't remember.
I knew him for many, many years. He and Cornette knows us both, and Cornette was good friends with him. He's good friends with me, and vice versa, all around. It was just always like a little jealousy thing there. Brian ended up doing well. He ended up going to WCW as a referee, and plus Smoky Mountain as a referee. And he was a really good. He was small. Me and him were. I was actually a little bit bigger than him. You know, I'm not a real big guy. But he was a really talented in the ring as far as he could work.
That's something people don't know. He was a hell of a worker. He dressed up.
He really was. Just a little
he dressed up like the turtle. Did you know he did the turtle?
Yeah. But what happened was he wasn't that good on the mic. And that was, he was a much better worker than me. I know my limitations, which are very much, as far as in the ring. But he wasn't very good on the stick. So that's what advanced me a little further. He was very good in the ring, but he still did well, and I'm glad. We're all young managers, me, him, and Heyman.
Right.
We're all fighting for spots, so it wasn't no animosity.
No,
it's just business. But yeah, I say God bless him. I hate that he died so young. I hate that he had to suffer through I believe it was stomach cancer.
It was, yes, it was.
But I will say this: I got his number from someone not long before he died. I called him up, and I actually spoke to him, and it was, it was nice to talk to him, but I didn't like to hear him, down like that. And but he was a good Catholic, just like me. So I know he's with God, and I say, I just hate it. But no, there was no animosity whatsoever.
No, I didn't think there was, but there was a connection. I couldn't remember exactly the connection. Brian's one of those guys that he got Memphis from me, and we traded Memphis tapes, and that was something that we were doing. Was you keyed into that? Because I've talked to guys during that time that was really, they didn't know we were all trading these tapes, and we was able to see. I remember Lance Russell going, "What?" When we told him, that the guys from Philly and the guys from here and the guys from there were all watching Memphis Wrestling from tapes. So
because, there was no cable TV back then, or it was just in his infancy. And of course, there was no internet and whatnot. So that's the only way people could watch other parts of the country. What it was, people would buy those magazines and they'd see, wow, there's wrestling in Florida, there's wrestling in New York, there's wrestling in, whatever. Really, the only national wrestling at that time you could see was when it first started out, WWF at the time, when cable first kicked in. Then here come World Class, and but before that, it was just territory, and people would read about it. There's wrestling there's 3 different territories in Texas, and whatnot. So
well, yeah, that's the way I was. We bought our first VCR in '85, I think. I don't know if you know this company, but I make a joke about it. It's called Finger Hut. Did you ever? Did you ever
I
hear?
used to be a member of yeah, I don't figure.
Where you paid a payment every week of $20 for the rest of your life.
Right.
But that's where we got our VCR, and I traded tapes like crazy, and it was just a whole different something that people will say, well, how does everyone know, who downtown Bruno is in this area? And everybody does. And what it is I was listening to another podcast, had nothing to do with wrestling, and I know this is going to surprise people that's not heard me say this, but I don't listen to wrestling podcasts because I just don't like my opinion to being affected by other people. But I was listening to this other podcast, and it talked about, Bruno, when people were watching that show, they didn't have, like you said, until there was a VCR, they didn't have another way. But say there was 20,000 people, there was 20,000 people watching that show in front of their television at one moment, that one time, and they were all watching you. You had a large audience there. I'm sure it wasn't the Beatles, but did you get to a place where you just couldn't go anywhere in this area?
Yeah, let me tell you something. And I tell this to any podcast or any interview or anything I do that ask me this. And this is God's honest truth. God's honest truth. And let me preface this statement. I'm not saying that I was so great. I'm not saying it's because of me. I'm like Tom Cruise. I'm like The Rock. I'm like whatever. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that Memphis TV show was so powerful and so strong. And I was on that. I was fortunate enough, blessed enough, and lucky enough to be on that. So, yes, it was that way, but not, I want everybody to understand this, not because of me. It was because of the TV show. But anyway, yes, in the mid to late 80s, before, all the cable kicked in and there was umpteen wrestlings everybody could watch, here in our home area, the only wrestling that people seen was Memphis wrestling. So let me tell you something. You're right. I couldn't go anywhere. I had to stay right around walls, just places where everybody knew me, and I had to Bruno again, because I know.
Right, yeah.
But, I mean, I've been in situations. Now, this is a true story, too, and I hate that Boss Winters was under the weather. As the fans don't know, the listeners don't know, Boss Winters, another Memphis wrestling manager, a good friend of mine, was going to join us on this podcast tonight, but he was under the weather, unfortunately. Hope he gets well soon. But anyway, his brother used to own a place called something Tire on Cleveland Street in Memphis. Number One Tire on Cleveland Street in Memphis. Me and Boss was good friends, so I became friends with Ricky, his brother. So one day I had something wrong with my tires. I needed something done. I can't remember. I don't know if I had to get new tires. He was doing an alignment. I can't remember what it was. But I went over to see Ricky Winters, Boss Winters' brother, on Cleveland Street to get the work done on my vehicle. Well, Ricky says, Bruno, I'll be glad to do it, but I got 2 cars ahead of you. There's a Burger King right up there. Why don't you just go up there and get something to eat or whatever and pass the time, and by the time you come back, I'll have you fixed up. Okay, that's fine. I went up to that Burger King. I was eating. A school bus full of young kids from the inner city there in Memphis. That's kind of like midtown Memphis going towards downtown Memphis. They come in. Oh, my God, that's downtown Bruno. They went effing nuts. I mean, they weren't violent. Well, they weren't violent or anything like that. No, they, what I mean? They were trying to attack me. But it was like the whole restaurant was like, they actually had to call the Memphis police just to, direct traffic. These kids went effing nuts because I was in there. I'll never forget it. It was like, oh, my God. They'd have walked me out through the back door through the kitchen area, and the cops brought me back to the tire place.
Oh, that's funny. That's funny. That's people that.
Yeah, but I'll tell you this too. This is damn near 40 years ago. Bear in mind. But another story about that really gets me. I was at a steakhouse up in Bartlett, Tennessee. I think it was a Rise. It might have been Ponderosa, Bonanza, whatever. This is almost 40 years ago. But I was in there eating, normally in places like that, you don't get the situation like I was talking about. Now, I got a lot of people walk up to me, excuse me, I hate to bother you, ain't you downtown Bruno, which was fine. I was never a heel to people as long as
Oh,
they didn't
wow.
heel to me. But I maintain like cocky, you know what I mean? Not like get away from me, like like Tojo would do that, which was wrong. Just you don't have to be mean to the people unless they walk up to you and say something mean. I was always, yeah, you want your picture with me? Well, I don't blame you. Look how good looking I am. You know what I mean? Just cocky.
Yeah. Just keeping the gimmick, but not being mean to them. Yeah.
Right. So I'll never forget this man walked up to me and he says, my daughter would really like to meet you. She was like 12, maybe 11, sitting way across at one of the other tables. I says, well, that'd be fine. Bring her on over. Well, she's scared that you'll start yelling at her. I said, I would never do that. I said, I don't do that. Why? Hey, the only ones I'm mean to is my opponents. They're trying to take my head off. I'm going to get up, the whole bit.
Right.
Never, ever exposed the business. Don't get me wrong. But I was friendly. Anyway, that little girl came over. She was so scared. And, I was real nice to her and everything. And her dad had a Polaroid camera. He went out in his car and got it. Remember, there was no cell phones back then or nothing.
Right. Yeah, this is way Polaroid is what everyone took a Polaroid of.
Right. And when I took my picture with that little girl, she was, it's so nice to meet you, Mr. Bruno. She started crying.
Oh my goodness.
And I never forget. I mean, she's probably 50 or whatever years old now. You know what I mean? But I'll never forget it. That goes to show the power that we had. Now, what if I'd have been a jerk to her or whatever? Not only that would have been the wrong thing to do, I don't think it would have helped business. I want to go down to the Coliseum and watch Bruno. I hope he gets his butt whipped. No, it would have been like, I don't ever want to watch that again.
Right. I wouldn't watch it. I wouldn't want to be around. It was me, Dutch Mantel, and Brian Lee riding to wrestling here in Jonesboro one night. And we got out of the car, and Brian Lee started yelling at a bunch of kids. And Dutch said, let's go. And we went inside. And as we went in, Dutch said, give me one moment. He said, I want y'all both to listen to this. And I was like, okay. I didn't say nothing to anyone. Man, he chewed Brian Lee's ass up and down. He said, don't ever yell and scream at kids like that. They're going to run and tell their parents, and you ain't never going to have them people here again. So don't ever – he was giving him hell about it. So it's kind of when I did manage – and I was, people in Dyersburg was where we were noticed and everyone knew who we were. I would always be nice to people, but I'm kind of like you. I never was like, I'm not going to smarten up anybody, but I wasn't going to be mean to them. I just could. I think it's part of my personality. I just couldn't do that.
Yeah, that's me too. Now, if somebody came up to me and said, oh, that's all a bunch of whatever.
Right. Yeah.
I'm not going to curse them out or nothing. Or if somebody starts cursing me, Bruno, you're a no good, blah, 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 blah. But, a normal person, why would I do that? Hey, let me say this to you, too, and you can edit this out if you can. I'm just curious. I looked on my screen on my right. It says, recording hasn't started. Is that nothing to be concerned about?
Well, we're recording.
It's weird. It says, recording hasn't started. Please stay in the studio after the show to finish uploading your recordings.
Okay, that's what I don't know. I don't know why it's doing that.
That's nothing to be concerned about?
No, I wouldn't, because, it says recording, and then when I tested it, well, you was crystal clear. I can cut this out.
Okay, yeah, cut this part out. So, but yeah, Tojo was a very good friend of mine, but I didn't understand his meanness to people. He was very mean to fans when they would approach him or whatever, and it was just, I didn't like that. I don't think that was protecting the business. I think that was hurting the business. It's just, even back then, people had their suspicions about, let's just say, the entertainment aspect of our business.
Right. Yeah.
But we don't wise them up to whatever there is to be wised up to. It's not the point. What I've always said is, okay, like, for example, I don't know if you watch this show, but probably my favorite show on TV is Chicago PD. Currently, I watch it regular basis, and there's the main character is Sergeant Voight, who's like a rogue cop that, will do what he can to get a confession out of the bad guy or, whatever. Okay.
Right.
And I get like really into it. I know that they're actors. I know the guy that he put the gun down his mouth and said, "You better give me a name right now or you're not going to see tomorrow," or whatever. But I don't want to know. I don't want to see the outtake where him and the guy that he just hit with a pistol or shaking hands or eating lunch together. You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
It does. And it was, my dad told a story where he got on the ferry. I know you remember I don't know if you remember in Dyersburg at one time they had a ferry. You had to get on the ferry
over to Missouri.
Yeah. And Dad got on that after he went to wrestling, and all the guys were on the ferry together. They were Tojo was with Jarrett, and they were feuding and blah blah blah. And my dad just quit watching it. He said, "Oh, it's a bunch of me." When the first show I went to was in Blytheville, Arkansas. I was in front row, and Bruno, I'm not saying I was smartened up, but I knew there was something going on. I never thought, every once in a while, and here's something, I know you've heard this before. It got real. Those guys are really mad at each other. Every once in a while, I'd come home and I'd be riding home with my mom and say, those guys were really fighting. And you do stuff like that. But, the thing about it is smartening up the business it messed up a lot of people. They just quit watching. Me, I started getting, the kayfabe sheets. I started learning, well, how do they do this?